first time I noticed him, I told myself it was a coincidence. It was late, maybe close to midnight, and I had just finished another shift at the diner. My feet hurt from standing. My hair smelled like fryer oil, and all I wanted was to collapse. On the couch with the TV flickering until I passed out. I lived on the second floor of an old apartment building, paint peeling, hallways smelling faintly of cigarettes and damp carpet. But it was cheap, and it was mine. I remember closing the blinds halfway, tossing my uniform in a heap, and padding barefoot into the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when I saw it. A man, standing across the street, perfectly still, facing my window. I froze, cup trembling in my hand. He wasn't near the lamplight, just a silhouette carved out of the shadows. I blinked, shook my head, tried to convince myself I was imagining things. When I looked again, he was gone. I laughed nervously, told myself it was just some guy waiting for his dog, or a neighbor stepping out for a smoke. I went to bed, convincing myself I was safe. But safety, I'd learn, was only an illusion. The following evening, I was brushing my teeth, foam dripping down my chin, when something compelled me to glance toward the blinds. I don't know why, I just felt it. And there he was again. Same spot, standing, watching. This time I couldn't see his face, but I swear his head tilted slightly, as though acknowledging me. My stomach dropped. I pulled the blinds shut so fast they rattled. I barely slept that night, ears straining at every creak of the building, heart hammering each time a car passed outside. I kept telling myself, he doesn't know who you are, he doesn't know where you live. But deep down, I didn't believe it. On the third day, the calls started. Unknown number. At first, silence, just long, heavy breaths pressing through the speaker. I would hang up, but the phone would ring again, over and over. The diner's manager noticed my pale face and bloodshot eyes. "You okay, kid?" she asked. I nodded, lied, just not sleeping much. I couldn't tell her the truth, couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Just a man in the shadows. Just a few phone calls. Nothing illegal. Nothing the police would take seriously. But my body knew. My bones knew. Someone was hunting me. Days blurred together. Work. Walk home. Pull the blinds. Drown in silence. I stopped watching TV. Stopped calling my friends. I didn't want anyone near me. Didn't want them dragged into whatever this was. I thought maybe if I kept my routine quiet, it would end. But stalkers don't end. They escalate. One night, I came home and found a note taped to my door. "You looked beautiful in red." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my keys. I hadn't worn red for weeks, except last Friday at the diner. The uniform was burgundy. That meant he'd been inside, watching. From then on, my apartment no longer felt like mine. Every creak of the floorboards made me jolt. Every shadow stretched too long. I taped the blinds shut, stuffed towels under the doors, left the TV on. Static, just to drown the silence. But nothing drowned the paranoia. I started drinking at night, just enough to blur the edges of fear, but never enough to sleep soundly. Dreams, when they came, were jagged. Faceless men standing at my window, cold fingers trailing my throat, knives glinting in darkened hallways. I woke up crying. I woke up screaming. I woke up knowing he was still out there. One night, I came home late. The hallway lights flickered overhead, buzzing like flies. My key shook in the lock as I pushed into my apartment, exhaustion pressing down on me like lead. Then I saw it, on the table, a Polaroid of me, asleep in my bed. I collapsed, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun, nausea rising until I was gagging into the sink. He had been inside, watching me sleep. The depression hit like a tidal wave after that. I stopped working, stopped eating. My body became a shell, running on coffee, cigarettes, and fear. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Was that creak outside my door him? Were those footsteps in the hall his? I sat curled on the couch for hours, knife clutched to my chest, staring at the door until my eyes burned. I stopped answering the phone, stopped answering texts. People gave up. I was alone, exactly how he wanted me. The night it ended, or maybe truly began, I was sitting in the dark, too scared to even turn on the lamp. Then came the knock, 3 soft raps against my door. Not frantic, not friendly, just deliberate. My whole body went rigid. I clutched the knife tighter, breath caught in my throat. Another knock, louder this time, and then a voice. "Open up." It was low, steady, a man's voice I didn't recognize. "I just want to talk." Tears spilled hot down my face. My hands shook so badly, the knife clattered against the floor. The doorknob rattled, slowly. Testing. I scrambled back into the corner, pressing myself into the wall, trying to make myself vanish. And then, silence. Minutes crawled by. Hours. I don't know. When I finally gathered the courage to crawl to the peephole, the hallway was empty, but taped to the door was another Polaroid dot of me. Standing at the peephole dot, that was the last straw. I left everything behind the next morning. Didn't pack, didn't quit my job. I just ran. Took a bus to another city, changed my phone, changed my name dot. But I don't feel safe. Not really. Every shadow could be him. Every stranger's gaze lingers too long. Sometimes my new phone rings once and cuts off. Sometimes I think I see him across the street. I don't know if he's still out there, but I know this. Once someone decides to own you with their eyes, to crawl inside your life like a parasite, you never get rid of them, you never escape. I lived on the 6th floor of a quiet apartment building in the city. Nothing special. Cracked. Tiles in the hallway. Elevators that smelled faintly of bleach. Neighbors I rarely spoke to. At night, the hum of traffic outside my window was almost comforting. The noise made me feel less alone, but then came the footsteps, They started one night while I was coming back from work. I had my headphones in, grocery bag in one hand, keys in the other. The stairwell echoed behind me, a steady pattern of shoes striking concrete. At first, I didn't think much of it. Someone else coming up the stairs. But when I slowed, the steps slowed. When I sped up, they sped up. I turned quickly on the landing. Empty. Just shadows stretching long under the dim bulbs. My heart thumped in my ears, but I forced a laugh, told myself I was being paranoid, and hurried inside. But paranoia has a way of sticking. The next night, it happened again. The same echo of footsteps, the same mirroring of my pace. I stopped, stood dead still, clutching the railing. The sound stopped too. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I rushed upstairs, fumbling with my keys, hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped them. For hours, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old pipe sounded like someone outside my door. I told myself I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew I wasn't alone. The text began a week later. Unknown number. At first, just one word. Pretty. I deleted it. Told myself it was a wrong number. The next day. Saw you on the stairs. The breath left my lungs in a single, sharp gasp. My fingers hovered over the phone, uncertain. Do I block the number? Call the police? But what would I tell them? Some texts. Footsteps. They would dismiss me. Tell me to be careful. That night, I pushed a chair against my door before bed. It didn't help me sleep. The messages multiplied. Your hair looks nice down. You shouldn't walk alone at night. Don't worry. I'll keep you safe. Each word pressed down heavier than the last. I changed my number. A week later, the new one started buzzing again. There was no escape. I stopped using the stairs. I stopped leaving my apartment after dark. Groceries were delivered. Blinds were shut. Lights dimmed. Still, I felt eyes everywhere, through the peephole, between the blinds. Crawling across my skin. Depression crept in like a damp fog. My body weakened under the weight of constant fear. I called in sick to work so often that eventually they stopped calling back. My friends' messages went unanswered until they gave up too. I spent days lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. That was when the gifts began. A small box outside my door one morning. Inside, a single Polaroid of me, asleep. My hair tangled on the pillow, mouth half open. I vomited into the sink. My hands shook uncontrollably as I scrubbed my skin raw in the shower, as though I could wash the invasion off me. But nothing could. A second gift came 2 days later. A necklace I'd lost months ago. One I thought had slipped down the drain. How had he found it? How had he been close enough to take it? I stopped eating. Food turned to dust in my mouth. I grew thin, hollow-eyed, drifting like a ghost through my own apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. One night, unable to bear the silence, I turned on the TV. Static flickered across the screen. Then, after a moment, a video played. Me, from behind, walking up the stairs, keys jangling in my hand. The camera followed closely, too closely, as though breathing down my neck. My scream cracked my throat raw. I hurled the remote at the screen, shattering it. The silence that followed was unbearable. I called the police then. I had no choice. They came, looked around, noted the broken TV, the gifts, the messages. They promised to look into it, but their eyes told me what their mouths didn't. They thought I was unstable, hysterical, another lonely woman making up stories in the dark. The officers left me with a pamphlet on home security. I burned it in the sink. The next day, I found writing on my bathroom mirror, traced into the steam after a shower I hadn't taken. Why don't you trust me? That night, I drank myself into oblivion, trying to blur out the terror. But alcohol doesn't erase. It only blunts the edge. When I woke at 3 a.m., head pounding, I heard the footsteps again. This time, they weren't in the stairwell. They were inside. I froze in bed, breath shallow, heart galloping in my chest. My apartment was silent, but not empty. I felt it. The air heavier, charged, as though I was being stared at in the dark. Reached for my phone, fingers trembling. The screen lit up with a notification. A new message. Don't scream. I'm here. Tears streamed hot down my face. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from crying out. My body shook violently under the blanket. I wanted to run, to flee, but my legs wouldn't move. For hours I lay there, eyes wide, waiting for the knife, the hand, the end, but it didn't come. When daylight finally bled through the blinds, I dared to move. The apartment looked untouched. No doors open, no windows broken, except for one thing. On the pillow beside me lay another Polaroid, of me, lying in bed, taken from above, that broke me, completely. I left that morning with nothing but a backpack. I didn't pack clothes, didn't take keepsakes. I walked out the door barefoot, my shoes forgotten by the couch. I boarded the first bus that came, no destination in mind. Tears streaking my face, shaking so badly, people stared. I thought leaving would help. That distance could save me. But distance means nothing to someone who's already inside your life. It's been 6 months. I live 3 cities away, under a different name, with locks on every door and cameras in every corner. And yet, the messages still come. Not daily, but enough to rot me from the inside. You can run, but you're still mine. Sometimes I hear the footsteps again, echoing faintly in the stairwell outside. Sometimes I see shadows pause too long across the street. I don't know if it's really him, or if fear has rewritten the world into his shape. But this much I know, he doesn't need to be close to destroy me. He already has. My life is an endless hallway now, stretching into silence, every door locked, every window barred. But still, I hear the steps behind me, always a beat too close. And I know, no matter where I run, no matter what name I wear, he'll always follow. That's what I told myself when I left Seattle for a seasonal job in Alaska. Bartending at a lodge near a small town, snow piled high against the windows, the northern lights curling green across the sky, a fresh start, far away from the city that suffocated me. At first, the silence was beautiful, nights stretched endlessly, the stars sharp and unblinking, the air smelled of pine and frozen water. People in town were kind but distant, their faces hardened by winters that never seemed to end. I liked the quiet. I liked the anonymity, until the notes started appearing, The first one was tucked under the wiper of my truck. You look lonely. I thought it was a bad joke, some drunk tourist trying to be clever. I crumpled it up and forgot about it, The second one came a few days later, pinned to my cabin door with a nail. I like the way you braid your hair. My stomach tightened. I hadn't braided my hair at work. I'd only done it in the privacy of my cabin. That meant someone had been watching me. By the third note, I couldn't convince myself it was harmless anymore. Don't be afraid. I'm looking out for you. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't find the words. How do you explain the weight of paper, the chill of ink? To anyone else, they were nothing. To me, they were everything. The paranoia bloomed like frost. I stopped walking to the lodge after dark, even though it was barely half a mile away. I drove instead, headlights cutting through the endless white. Each tree seemed to lean toward me, each shadow stretching longer than it should. The lodge was warm, filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, music playing faintly from the jukebox. But even there, I felt eyes pressing against my skin. One night as I closed up, I saw fresh footprints in the snow outside the back door. Not mine, not anyone's from inside. They circled the building, slow and deliberate, and ended just beneath the window where I worked the bar. I told myself they belonged to a hunter, a hiker, anyone but him, Dot. But I knew better, Dot. The texts began soon after. I hadn't given my number to anyone in Alaska. I didn't use social media anymore. Still, they found me. That sweater looks soft. Bet it keeps you warm. You shouldn't drink coffee so late. It keeps you up. I like when you hum. I didn't hum at the lodge, only in the cabin, when I thought no one could hear. Me. Sleep became impossible. I left the radio on all night. Anything to break the silence. My body ached from exhaustion. My reflection grew thinner, more hollow with each passing day. Depression weighed me down. I felt trapped in my own life, every step heavy, every moment haunted by the thought that he was near. And then I started hearing him. It began as faint tapping at my window, late at night. The kind of sound you could dismiss as branches or wind. But there were no trees near the glass, only snow. The tapping grew bolder. Sometimes it came with a low whistle, tuneless but steady, rising and falling in the darkness. I would lie frozen in bed, the blanket pulled to my chin, waiting for it to stop. But it never stopped. It only paused. The first time I called the police. They drove out, saw nothing, and told me to lock up tighter. They didn't understand. Locks don't stop someone who already lives in the shadows of your life. The second time I called, they didn't come at all. That was the night I found the gift, a rabbit, gutted, laid neatly on my porch, its fur soaked with blood, steam rising, faintly, in the cold air. Beside it, another note, you don't need anyone else, just me. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Work became unbearable. I jumped at every door opening, every hand brushing too close across the bar. Customers noticed, whispered to each other, stopped tipping. My boss grew frustrated, said I was scaring people off. I wanted to tell him everything, but what would I say? A man is following me. He knows when I'm awake. He knows when I'm asleep. He knows the sound of my voice in my own home. The truth sounded like madness. I began skipping shifts, lying in bed with curtains drawn, clutching the heavy hunting knife I'd bought from a pawn shop in town. The walls pressed closer every day. Sometimes I thought I heard him breathing in the corner of the room, soft and steady, though no one was there. The fear turned me into something less than human, a trembling animal. And then came the night he entered. It was 2 a.m. I woke with the unmistakable sound of snow crunching outside, slow, deliberate steps circling the cabin. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. No signal. The storm had knocked the towers out. The crunching stopped. Silence swallowed the room whole. I prayed. I was imagining it. That's when the door handle rattled. Soft at first, then harder. I held the knife tight, breath coming in gasps, tears streaking my face. Don't fight me, a voice whispered through the wood. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Just sat there, back pressed against the wall, waiting for the door to splinter. But it never did. After what felt like hours, the rattling stopped. The silence returned. When morning came, I opened the door to find another note, pinned to it with a hunting knife. You're mine. That was the last straw. I packed what little I had, threw it in my truck, and drove. Snow blinded me, the road slick with ice. But I didn't care. I drove until the gaslight blinked, until I found myself in another town, another nameless road. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I changed my number again. I paid cash for everything. It's been 8 months since then, but I still don't feel safe. Sometimes, when the wind howls outside, I swear I hear the whistle, that same tuneless rise and fall. Sometimes I wake to find fresh footprints in the snow outside my window, circling, always circling. I keep the knife by my bed. I tell myself I'm ready if he comes. But deep down, I know I'll never be ready. Because he's not just outside anymore. He's inside. Everywhere I go, every breath I take, I feel him, watching, waiting, patient as the endless Alaskan winter. And I know one day, when the snow is high and the night is long, he'll step out of the dark. And I won't escape. A new message. Don't scream. I'm here. Tears streamed hot down my face. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from crying out. My body shook violently under the blanket. I wanted to run, to flee, but my legs wouldn't move. For hours, I lay there, eyes wide, waiting for the knife, the hand, the end, but it didn't come. When daylight finally bled through the blinds, I dared to move. The apartment looked untouched. No doors open, no windows broken. Except for one thing. On the pillow beside me lay another Polaroid of me, lying in bed. Taken from above. That broke me completely. I left that morning with nothing but a backpack. I didn't pack clothes, didn't take keepsakes. I walked out the door barefoot, my shoes forgotten by the couch. I boarded the first bus that came, no destination in mind, tears streaking my face, shaking so badly people stared. I thought leaving would help. That distance could save me. But distance means nothing to someone who's already inside your life. It's been 6 months. I live 3 cities away, under a different name, with locks on every door and cameras in every corner. And yet the messages still come. Not daily, but enough to rot me from the inside. You can run, but you're still mine. Sometimes I hear the footsteps again, echoing faintly in the stairwell outside. Sometimes I see shadows pause too long across the street. I don't know if it's really him, or if fear has rewritten the world into his shape. But this much I know. He doesn't need to be close to destroy me. He already has. My life is an endless hallway now, stretching into silence. Every door locked, every window barred. But still, I hear the steps behind me, always a beat too close. And I know, no matter where I run, no matter what name I wear, he'll always follow. That's what I told myself when I left Seattle for a seasonal job in Alaska. Bartending at a lodge near a small town, snow piled high against the windows, the northern lights curling green across the sky. A fresh start, far away from the city that suffocated me. At first, the silence was beautiful. Nights stretched endlessly, the stars sharp and unblinking. The air